Hello everyone and welcome to the new episode of Darktable. In this episode we will see how can we deal with colors in Darktable. Okay, let's get started. This is our first photo that needs color adjustment, and normally before you start your editing, or one of the first steps of editing is to adjust white balance. And white balance in scene referred workflow is done with color calibration. You don't need to use white balance anymore. You're using color calibration for that purpose. And you go to the first tab, Chromatic Adaptation Transform, CAT tab. And now you have a lot of options. But the first thing what you need to do is just to click on that color picker, and Darktable will try to adjust that white balance automatically on the whole image. And if you are not satisfied with that automatic adaptation, you can try to find some element in the picture which is color neutral. That means it's gray or it's white or it's poor black. Now I think this house, for example, in here, this wall, could be good area, so let's use that and see what happens. Now it's too bluish. I can adjust the temperature here, go up and down, something like that, or maybe a bit less. Or if I'm not satisfied with that, what Darktable has found, I can also do it manually by choosing another illuminant. I will make, this is the point would need to be opened, that menu. Now I click on that menu and I can find custom mode. In custom mode I have the option to use hue and chroma for that white balancing. Now I can move hue, for example, back, add some chroma, and this is something that I like. So that's all what you need to know. You don't need to go too deep in theory behind all those other options. That's enough for white balancing. As you can see, this photo is already edited. I've done this in the last episode, and at the end of that episode I also made some changes in the color of the sky. I would like to repeat that process now and explain what I'm doing. For that I have also used vectorscope to show us the distribution of the colors, and what the vectorscope does, or how it works. Maybe I can demonstrate a little bit with color zones module. And as you can see, we have our hue wheel on the around with three primary colors: red, green, and blue. Excuse me. And as you can see, we have already a lot of red in our picture or in our photo, and blue or red are those roofs, and blue is the sky. And you can watch what happens if I add saturation, for example, in red. You see how it gets bigger and goes to the edge of our wheel, and opposite I'm removing it and red goes into the middle. The same with blue, up and down. You see the change. And also we can rotate our colors. Let's go, for example, for hue and change that red to green. As you can see how the peak of the red goes to the green, and opposite direction to the blue. That's how vectorscope works, and we can see those changes immediately in the picture. Okay, but I don't want to use colored zones for that. I would like to use color calibration for that. So let's go back to the last step and use another instance of color calibration module. Now, color calibration module has already a lot of options. I've demonstrated some of them in the last episode, but we will deal now with those three tabs, RGB tabs, and that's so-called channel mixer. And I will demonstrate now how the channel mixer works. To be able to do that, let's analyze a little bit the colors of our photo and distribution of those three channels. Now we can already recognize that we have a lot of blue in the sky, so that means blue is dominant in the sky, blue channel. Let's say, for the sake of simplicity, we have in the sky 80% of blue, and also here in the reflection but on the roofs of the houses we have only maybe 10%, let's say, because on the roof the red color is dominant. Maybe the red is 90% on the roof. Now we have that ratio for blue channel now. Let's see what can we do with this ratio. That will be interesting now for dealing with colors. Now the idea is to remove a bit red from the sky, but not too much from the rest. Excuse me. Now we can use that ratio of blue to remove a red from the sky. So we don't use that ratio of red, but the ratio of blue. So if I move now input blue in red channel, that means I am using this ratio to removing red and remove some red, let's say 10%. Let's say that's 10%. Now I have removed 10% from 80. 80% is 8. Excuse me. Now I have removed 8% of red from the sky, but 10% from 10% is 1%. Only 1% from the roofs, because I didn't use the ratio of reds in the picture, but the ratio of blue to remove red. That is how the channel mixer works. Now to compensate that, let's move our red drawings. To compensate that, I could add just a tiny bit red back, but this time I will use ratio of red. That means I'm adding much more red to the roofs and not so much to the sky. So that means now I have removed much more red from the sky than from the roof, because I've used the ratio of the blue for that. Now in the next step I can go to the green now, because I want to add some green only to the sky. So that means I will also use that ratio of the blue to add that green to the sky. Something like that. And compensate it by using the ratio of the green to remove greens. Something like that maybe. You can see these changes also in the vectorscope. Now before and after. What I have done, I've practically rotated only this blue part towards green, but didn't touch too much of the red, as you can see. Before and after. That is how the channel mixer works. It's not too complicated. Now, I don't want to use, I don't want to change the whole sky, the colors of the whole sky, and only on the horizon. So I would like to add to that just one drone mask. Something like, excuse me, I just want to move the mask a bit. Maybe something like that. And as we can see, before and after, I think I could also add tiny little bit of more red there, just tiny little bit, so to balance it a little bit. Before and after. Now, as you can see, we have changed this look of the sky, changed the colors by removing the red and adding a little bit green without touching anything else. So that is how the color calibration works. It is also a nice tool to make some white balancing by situations that's not so easy to make with normal white balance. Now I would like to demonstrate that. This is our next photo. Now let's make some correction first and adjustments so that we can see what is going on. So lens correction, chromatic aberration, exposure, maybe a tiny bit filmic. Let's change it to the main view. I don't know, something like that. Maybe a bit of contrast, color balance. We don't need too much colors here, but just a tiny bit, so like we can see how that looks like. Now let's see what happens if we try to white balance this picture. Now we have much better color of the skin, but we have everything else. It's too bluish. Let's try something else. For example, let's say this is a neutral color, and now we already again have that problem with too reddish skin color. Okay, now let's see how can we deal with that. Now I will add a next instance of color calibration, and let's analyze a little bit the picture. So as we have seen, or as we can see, skin tones are too much reddish. Now we need to remove some red from the skin, but without influencing too much the background. Okay, let's do that with channel red, and we will use the ratio of the red, input red, because the red is most prominent in the skin. So let's do that. Now it looks much better. The skin looks much better. It's not too reddish more, but we have also removed that red from the background. As we know that red is not much prominent in the background, we can now use our input green and input blue to compensate that. For example, the blue is much prominent in the background, so now we can use that ratio of blue to add some red back. Something like that. Now we added much more red on the background than on the face. because the blue is not so prominent in the face. We can also try to add some tiny bit of green. Also use a green ratio, excuse me, to add some reds, and maybe go just a bit down with reds. And now we have improved our face. As you can see, it's go toward yellow, but the background is not influenced too much, as you can see. Maybe even more. Let's see. And what kind of color? That's combination between blue and green, and now it's much better. So tiny little adjustment, but now we have our white balance made with our channel mixer. Okay, let's see what we can do next with our color calibration channel mixer. We will use this photo now to demonstrate how can we use color calibration or channel mixer for color grading. And to do that, let's first make our adjustments real quick so that we can see our picture much better. I don't know, do we need some balancing? Maybe like that. Let's leave it there. Then what I also need, just a bit of filmic. And now I can demonstrate also how can you use color calibration to add a contrast. Now you remember in the last episode we are using a low pass for that. Let's try to use color calibration. Next instance, go to gray. Let's use, for example, red channel for black and white version. And now we can also use, like in the last time, multiply blend mode, and you can see we have nice contrasts. That's another option to add some contrast there. Now we don't want to go too far, something like that. Now we will use color balance real quick. Nothing fancy, just a little bit colors, and maybe a bit more exposure, and use tone equalizer for adjust a little bit highlights, bring them back, something like that. Now our image is prepared for color grading with color calibration. Okay, let's start. New instance of color calibration. We're going to red. We will use input green or ratio of green and ratio of blue to remove a bit red, compensate that, similar like in the last time. As you can see, we have already some interesting look. And now we'll go to blue, add some blue to the greens, remove the greens, and we already have something like teal and orange, as you can see. Or we have orange colors here and the rest is bluish. You can also see that in the vectorscope. Let's give it another version. Duplicate, go back and reset it. Now the other version is you remove red but add green to the red, and go to the green, add some blue to the green, remove a bit green, and you can also recognize how it's going. Now we go to the blue and remove input red from the blue and add bit blue back. something like that. It's also some kind of teal and orange. You can see we have orange and blue on the vector scope. Now you have an idea. You can play a bit more if you want, but it's just a quick demonstration. How can you use channel mixer for color grading, but also for white balancing, as I showed you before. Now, let's see what will be the next module, what we'll need to address, and that will be color balance, four-way step, and masks. And we will do that in the next episode of Darktable and dealing with colors. So thank you for watching, and until the next time.